I am super excited to welcome you to the press conference for Captain America: Civil War. Amazing! So, right now, I'm going to welcome out the folks who are going to be speaking to you today. It is a pleasure to welcome President of Marvel Studios and producer of Captain America: Civil War, Kevin Feige. Also, Emily VanCamp is up next. Come on out. Hey, good to see you.
We're doing all this like live.
Also, Mr. Cheadle. Iron Man himself. It's all about Team Iron Man right now. Mr. Robert Downey Jr.
You can do it back there. So sexy. I'll let you go. So sexy. No,
Tough act to follow, but I know this guy can do it. Mr. Paul Bettany.
Oh, thank you very much.
And then last but certainly not least, the director, Anthony Russo. Hi, everybody. So, Civil War, am I right?
You're right.
Yes!
You got to be right.
Robert, this is happening.
Thank you. I'll enter my body any minute now.
Hopefully this will get you in there. Now, I feel like over the course of these films, we've seen like the layers of Tony Stark peeled back to reveal like a really emotional center.
Yeah.
Do you feel that's the case, and how does that continue in Civil War?
I'm still reeling from the fact that Paul Bettany was Jarvis and now he's Vision. I mean, there's something. If you just stop and you go, so here's what's going on with Tony, you go, wait a minute, did he make a guy? Look at him.
Yeah, Dad.
So proud of you.
Dad.
As far as the emo arc of Tony over these bunch of years, I think anyone who sticks around for more than a minute and joins the party here, it's all about, and particularly as I'm sure either Russo would attest, it's all about, that's where I think Marvel has really done its smartest moves, you know, is making sure that there's a real emotional impact to what's going on. And I am no exception.
Now, even though Civil War has this unbelievable emotional pull, I wanted to ask you if you thought that there were certain technological advances that allowed for this movie to happen in the extraordinary way that it does.
Wow. Well, look, there's a man sitting next to us that used to be Jarvis, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, now, do you mean within the world, or you mean outside in terms of filmmaking?
Well, I mean, my actual intention was for, like, in the effects world, like on the technical side of the film. However, if you think there's something interesting to talk about within the world, that too.
Oh, no, I can talk to, look, every movie, like, I think part of the popularity of big special effects driven movies these days is the fact that the technology has reached such an incredibly high level. And every movie, every couple years it changes. And this movie, you know, you sort of reap the benefits and you sort of push forward on every film. I mean, this movie has a very remarkable sequence, I think, where Robert Downey Jr. plays a 20-year-old man, which is pretty incredible.
I don't.
Just suck it in.
Wait a second. I don't think it's that hard to believe.
It's happening. It's happening. I mean, he plays someone who's around the age he was when we all first saw him on the screen.
No.
So it's like it's a
nostalgic.
Yeah, it's a pretty
Very
amazing,
expensive nostalgia, I'm told.
It was very. Look at it. It took us months and months of work on that shot to make it work. It's very complicated, taking the human face and changing the human face in a way that looks realistic. And in fact, it was the last shot we completed in the movie. Just dropped into the movie maybe 5 days ago.
On Robert's birthday.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
Synchronicity abounds.
Yeah.
Kevin, do you find yourself visiting set and getting completely jealous of all of the magical things these folks have to go through and the heat and the conditions of shooting?
I don't know if I'm jealous of the heat necessarily, but I'm in awe always. I'm in awe when they're in costume. I'm in awe when they're out of costume. And I've said it before, and it's only getting more and more so as cast members keep joining. There's never been an ensemble like this in cinematic history. It's really astounding. We break it up into 2 panels today because everyone is a headliner, and and getting them in a room together is pretty awe-inspiring.
So I wanted to know, Paul, you're new to the outfit. Do you guys compare who's got it worse on the set? Especially the new guys? Do you guys compare notes?
I think it's a photo finish, but I think that maybe Chadwick, with the whole not being able to breathe business is.
You can't tell with Paul because he's British. It's hard to know exactly how excruciating. We should all be a bit more like Paul. That's all I can say. Last question.
I'm stealing that.
Could you guys talk a little bit about bringing Spider-Man into the mix? I mean, it was so flawlessly done. Didn't feel forced at all, and it was just one of the amazing aspects of the film. Can you guys talk about that?
Sure. Look, it was very important to all of us, all the filmmakers, the folks at Marvel, Kevin, my brother, myself, the writers. Look, we knew we wanted to tell a really complicated story between Captain America and Iron Man in this movie, a story that went to very difficult, dark places. We're big fans of balance in storytelling. We like really well-rounded movies, like movies that make us laugh and cry. So for us, it became very important to find a way to change the dynamics and modulate the tone in the movie by bringing in characters that didn't have the same emotional investment that all the Avengers had in the events that were unfolding, because they're very serious events, complicated events. So to bring in characters like Spider-Man, like Ant-Man into the movie who don't have that baggage, it gave us an opportunity as storytellers to sort of bring new colors into the film at a deep place in the movie, lighter colors, more whimsical colors, and I think it just helped balance that big fight out that they all have with one another at the airport in a really nice way. We tried to find very organic ways that those characters found their ways into the movie, both of those characters, and it was just, I know Kevin can elaborate more on the decision. He was very critically central to making it happen. I don't know that a lot of people could have pulled off getting Spider-Man in this movie except for Kevin Feige. So
I think it was a good answer, right?
I want Kevin to walk back into the thunderous applause he deserves. That was tepid.
No.
I was really pissed off.
Can't get up.
Or he can just sit there and take it.
Hello. My question is for Don. After seeing the movie, I feel like everybody has new tricks and toys, and I feel like maybe War Machine hasn't gotten the upgrade that he deserves. So I wonder if he has any animosity towards Tony, who has.
Thank God somebody finally laid it bare.
Because Tony has a lot of new suits since we first saw him compared to.
Yeah, I think we'll see. It's not over. Unless it is, because I haven't seen the movie. Do I live? Does War Machine live? That's your hubris. You'll see in the next one. Wait a minute. I think there are potentially more tricks up War Machine's sleeve. We'll see.
You guys have touched on it a little bit, but I think if you guys were to ask everybody in this audience what the most exciting sequence in this movie is, they would definitely say the airport sequence. I imagine it was one hell of a thing to put together, so I was just hoping you could talk a bit about just kind of the days that you were putting in production.
Well, I just think from my perspective, it's really interesting because it's not until we see usually the completed project that we know actually what all has gone on, Often it's these disparate, moments that we're trying to focus on, and we'll see previs, and we'll the Russos will give us a good explanation of what's happening. But it's not until you see it all together that it's like, wow. Yeah. It's really an amazing technological feat that it all works.
So just for the record, there's an airport sequence in this movie.
That's exactly right.
Looking forward.
Question for Kevin. Black Panther does such an amazing job, and this movie has a great role to play, and Chadwick Boseman, I think, was phenomenal in his performance. So at what point did you decide that Black Panther was going to be an essential part of this story as you guys were developing the script? And then what stood out when you were going through the process of casting that made you know that Chadwick was the right guy for the role of T'Challa?
It was relatively early on in the development process of the movie that Joe and Anthony and our screenwriters, Chris and Steve, thought it would be very valuable to have somebody, sort of in the way that Anthony was talking about Spidey and Ant-Man, people that weren't quite as invested. We wanted somebody who perhaps was invested, but didn't have allegiances to any one side, who was essentially in it for very personal reasons himself. We knew we wanted to make a Black Panther movie at some point, but at that time we weren't sure exactly when that would be. But as these discussions were going on, and we thought, I think we're going to bring Black Panther into this movie. I'm not kidding when I say Chadwick was the only choice. You know, his performance at 42, his performance in Get On Up, how different those performances are. And my memory is we called him on the conference room speaker when we were developing the movie and got him while he was somewhere in Switzerland or something at a premiere for Get On Up. And he was in his car, either about to get out or had just gotten back in. And we said, have you ever heard of Black Panther? And he went, yes, yes. Why are you asking me that? And we said, do you want to play the part? And he was very excited. And it happened very, very quickly.
Emily, I want to ask you really quickly, like, now that this is your second film, do you really feel like you've hit a stride?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think I was definitely slightly intimidated in the first one, in The Winter Soldier, and, you know, just kind of getting used to it. I think that lent itself well for the character. She was sort of more in like a rookie stage, and it's great to see her come back in a little bit more of like a mature light. She's, you know, confident
and she's still good with guns, girl.
Still good with guns. But yeah, she's a great character to play. I'm having so much fun with her, and you know, she gets to kick a little butt in this one, and you know, it's great fun.
I really want to know, I've never heard anybody speak to this, so excuse me if you've already spoken to it. Do you ever have an idea as to where your characters are going in the future? The Marvel Universe is so interconnected, and certainly there's a vision past what we're seeing on the screen at the time. Do you ever get clues as to play it this way, knowing that you're going to go here eventually at some point? Does that ever happen, or is it a secret from even you guys? Don't frown at me, Kevin Feige. I didn't ask him to tell me what he said.
In all seriousness, I would say it varies. I would say the characters don't know what's supposed to be happening to them, so I don't know how helpful it would be. And sometimes there's a long play that I think Paul knew for quite a while. Vision was coming down the pipeline and had to keep it a secret for quite a while. Robert's very good at keeping secrets, so we can tell him anything at all times.
Locked vault, that one.
It really does vary. There's some big picture things. I remember pitching sort of the big twist of Winter Soldier to Chris Evans when we were shooting the final scenes in New York on the first Avengers film. So they're long things like that, and then they're shorter. Can you come over right now? Moments.
So this question's for Mr. Russo. What about the world today demands a popularity resurgence on superheroes?
Demands a popularity resurgence? Look, you know, you can answer that question, I think, in a lot of different ways, but, you know, we live in a very complicated world, and it seems like it gets more and more complicated every day, and I think there's lots of signs of that we're all experiencing and going through and struggling with. You know, there's something very reassuring about having a fantasy film that can deal with a lot of these issues, but in a way that's one step removed. You know, it's hard to deal with reality sometimes when it's in your face. You need a little buffer from it. You need to place it within a context where your imagination can roam and your emotions can flow in a way that's maybe not as complicated or threatening as in your real life. So I do think, especially with these Captain America movies, because I think there's a political dimension that's like inherent with the character because of his origin, his name, etc. I don't know. I think maybe it provides us a space to play in and explore that's a little safer in some ways than reality.
It's an incredibly smart answer.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you, sir. That's an incredible compliment coming from this.
No, I just sound, it's being British, I just sound smart. I left school at 16, I have no idea what you're talking about. I just said, you presented it in a smart way.
It just sounded smart.
Yeah, it sounded smart.
Yeah, it sounds smart.
That's my Cleveland accent.
I called Robert relatively early saying, I think there's a chance we might get Spider-Man in this movie. And his reaction was actually one just like a fanboy, which was unbelievably excited for what that could mean for this movie. And then I would, a few weeks after that said, hey, we've sort of culled it down to about 5 finalists. Could we bring them to Atlanta, and would you mind reading with all 5 of them? And he did, and then we culled it down a little bit more, and he did, and that was how Tom came to the top. Then Tom and one other person came back and read did more of a stunt test, in which Chris Evans was gracious enough to read opposite him. But it was fun seeing that Robert was invested, and to see Tom react to Robert, which is not dissimilar from the way Peter was reacting to Tony, was actually quite cool.
I will add this. I mean, obviously the character has a very special relationship with Robert's character in the movie, and most of his work, the vast majority of his work, is with Robert. I mean, it's just like Kevin said. Robert was incredibly generous in terms of going through the process.
Why didn't you know all these reviews were going to come out?
I mean, helping us all figure out who the right person was for the role. But not only that, once Tom got cast, to all of our delight, then working with Tom, a young performer, and sort of bringing him into this very complicated fold with all these very sophisticated performers and pedigreed performers. And I mean, I remember when he did the big bedroom scene with Tom, and I remember Joe and I sitting at the monitors and just reflecting on the idea that, wow, like the greatest gift that you can give an actor is to be in a scene with Robert Downey Jr. I mean, it's
in a bedroom scene.
I wanted to say, because I didn't get to, and I've seen the movie, Rhodey and Tony have had this kind of ongoing arc, but then there's all this bad guy and all this stuff that has to happen. And what I really appreciate is, and I credit Kevin and the Russos for really making sure it happens this time, is you really get back to this baseline, ongoing, complicated friendship that they have, and it's obviously challenged to a different degree. And I remember when we were doing that kind of resolution scene at the end and all that stuff. And that was before I saw Miles Ahead and realized that not only did I already thought you were great, but now I realize you're probably the most talented person I've ever been working with in a long time.
Thank you, man.
Present company included.
You have a lot of hero versus hero fights in this, not just Downey and Evans, but I mean a lot. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the process of pairing up those conflicts, and more importantly, how you integrated them with the story and turned it into more than just random slugfests.
It's a complicated question. Look, we thought about. My brother and I always say that we love action. We're action fetishists. But, it's like for us, action always needs to be driven by a sense of character and a sense of story, beat by beat by beat, through the action sequence, or else you just lose interest in it. It has no value to the storytelling. So we looked for opportunities in the movie to play with these rich, complicated relationships. There's a very interesting relationship between Paul's character in this movie and Lizzie Olsen's character in the movie, Scarlet Witch and Vision. That begins to develop an interesting, complicated relationship, and to put them on opposite sides, in the battle was very exciting to us because it sort of interfered with what was happening, the dynamic between these characters and watching them push that forward. I mean, what did that? Just to ask you, Paul, like, how did that sort of like inform your experience of it, having a personal relationship with a character while at the same time finding yourself on the opposite side in a fight?
I think it was a really, really interesting idea. You find Vision at this, in Age of Ultron, he is just born and omnipotent yet naive, and then in this movie, you find him trying to figure out what humanity is and how you have loyalty, because logic doesn't afford loyalty. So I think he's really interested in working out what love is, and there's this woman who has a similar problem that he's facing, which is he doesn't know the limits of his power, and nor does she. And of course, love can make you feel loyal. And at the end of this movie, I think it's a double-edged sword, because you see this his response at finally having a human response is. He makes a big mistake. which is interesting, and I thought it was a really deft piece of storytelling. So it was really fun to do, especially moving forward.
I know your background with Revenge, and you were always kicking butt on there. And with this character, you just mentioned that you did have a little bit of a chance to kind of kick ass. But do you ever want to do more, since that is something that you're very familiar with and you did on Revenge? And
yeah, look, I love it. I love all the physical stuff, and it's brilliantly done in these movies. But I also think, what's great about these films is you're also developing these characters over time, and so that's one element, that's great, but I also really enjoyed getting to really share Sharon with the audience as well, because we only knew her as Agent 13, and sort of explore that relationship with Steve. That was really interesting to me, because their relationship in the comic books was great and complicated and interesting, and we're sort of just delving into that now, which was really fun. So I love all of that stuff. All of it together is great.
I actually have a two-part question. First for Kevin and Anthony. When you make a movie like this and you have so many characters, what's the biggest struggle with putting each character in there for screen time and knowing the right amount? And then for the actors, what do you think about each of your characters is the characteristic that draws audiences into those roles?
Kevin?
Well, I think so much of the credit for your first question, or the success with balancing those characters, goes to Chris Marcus and Steve McFeely, who really know that you talk about Spidey. Screen time doesn't equal, it's quality, not quantity, right? If people have moments that land, if people have a laugh, if people have a cheer, that's sometimes all you need to say, this character's been serviced. Let's move on to bigger story. And Joe and Anthony are always so adamant, rightfully so, that the overall story is being serviced as opposed to every single character in the film. I think that's how you take this many characters and balance a singular, relatively simple story, and have them there, and each of their moments where they earn a laugh or earn a tear or earn a cheer serve the very specific story at hand.
Well, I watched the movie with a stopwatch to see. No?
Everybody does.
Nobody? I'm the only one who does that?
No, I do it too.
Gotcha.
What is it that you think draws people to your characters, guys? Like, do you think there's a central characteristic?
Well, I know that Rhodey's always trying to, and in this movie too, he's always struggling with what does he owe as a serviceman, and what is his duty and chain of command, and how must that be protected and honored. But also, I'm in this team of people who, some of them are, have, as Paul was saying, no limit to their power, and where are the checks and balances, and that's something that's obviously central to this film as well. But I think that's an understandable sort of fence that he's on, and how do you friendship versus chain of command, and all those things that I think Rhodey's trying to balance as he goes forward with this group of guys.
Do any of you have anything to add to that? I think it's a really interesting question as we wind up. Like, why do people just love you guys?
I just think that for Vision, that the synthetic people around the world can, yearning to break free from the shackles of expectation. They really get behind my character. I think I speak for them.
Your TVQ in the mannequin world is unbelievable.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right?
Question, since we were talking about Spider-Man a second ago, my question is, how exactly did Tony know about Spider-Man, and does how he know mean that he is aware of the other New York heroes?
In our minds, we were picking up Peter Parker's story at a point after which he's gotten his powers, but before which he's fully sort of come out with them.
Pulled you right out of that one.
And so he had, in our storytelling, he has been doing some things in New York, and there's been these sort of Sasquatch-like videos of what he's been doing that's been showing up. You've heard word of mouth that something's happening. There's this very strange thing happening. So it's kind of something that's in the rumor mill, but nobody has been able to identify who exactly this is yet or how it's happening, etc. But of course, Tony Stark being who Tony Stark is, he's one step ahead of everybody else.